Ever find yourself wishing you could read minds?
Uh-huh. Who hasn't?
Okay, well, maybe not full-on telepathy.
Right.
But wouldn't it be amazing to understand what people were really thinking, even when they don't say it out loud?
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. That fascinating world of nonverbal cues.
It really is fascinating. And you know what the good news is?
What's that?
This isn't some superpower only spies and secret agents have. It's a skill, really, that anyone can learn and improve on.
So we're talking actual science here.
Absolutely. We're talking psychology, behavior analysis,
Wow.
even a little neuroscience gets in there too.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it, because sometimes what people say and what they actually mean are like worlds apart.
Totally.
One of the sources I was looking at said something like 90% of communication is actually nonverbal.
It's huge.
There's a lot of unspoken stuff flying around.
It is. And the thing is, we already pick up on a lot of these nonverbal signals all the time. We just don't even realize it.
Oh, totally, like that gut feeling you get about someone.
Exactly. That's your brain working in the background processing all those cues. So what we're doing today is, well, we're giving you the tools to make sense of those gut feelings,
I love it.
Become even more aware of what's really going on in your conversations.
I'm so here for this. So where do we even begin with all this nonverbal decoding? I saw body language was a big one.
Body language is key, yeah. It's really the foundation.
Okay.
Imagine you walk into a meeting and there's someone sitting there, arms crossed, tight. Maybe their feet are pointed towards the door.
Oh, I can picture it now.
What's your gut telling you about that person?
They would rather be anywhere else but in that meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, imagine someone's leaning in while you're talking,
Okay.
maybe mirroring your gestures.
Interesting.
It might seem subtle, but it could be their way of saying, hey, I'm with you on this.
That actually reminds me of this time I was pitching an idea at work, and my boss, he kept mirroring my gestures. I don't even think he realized he was doing it.
Uh-huh. Wow.
It was a little strange at the time, but you know what? Maybe it was a good sign after all, because he ended up loving the idea.
There you go. See, it just shows how much of this stuff happens under the surface,
Yes.
We don't even realize it. And it's not always about those big, obvious postures either, even small things.
Yeah.
Like, say, how someone's holding their coffee cup.
Really?
Yeah, a loose grip, relaxed. Probably means they're feeling pretty comfortable. But if they're practically crushing it, could be some underlying tension there.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about those times when people are really trying to hide their true feelings?
Good point.
Like you're in a job interview or maybe a high-stakes poker game, something like that. Can you still pick up on those subtle signals?
That's where those, what do they call those? Micro expressions come into play.
Oh, yes. The source material mentioned those. They sound so sneaky.
There are these super quick, almost impossible to see facial movements, but they betray our real emotions.
Wow.
Even if we're trying really hard to keep them under wraps.
Do you have an example?
Sure. Yeah. Imagine you're giving a presentation
Okay.
and you ask for some feedback. Someone might say, that sounds great. But just for a split second, a tiny little frown flashes across their face before they smile.
Oh, wow. I would totally miss that.
That, right there, that's a micro expression. And that could be them showing hesitation or disagreement,
Interesting.
even though their words are saying something totally different.
It's like their real feelings are trying to sneak out.
Yeah, you could say that. And the face is really interesting because body language can be different across cultures.
That's true.
But a lot of facial expressions, they're universal.
Oh, that makes sense.
Happiness, sadness, anger, they tend to look the same all over the world.
This might sound a little basic, but where do our eyes fit into all of this? They've got to be a dead giveaway for what someone's really thinking, right?
You're on the right track. There's this idea called the eye contact triangle. It's all about where someone's looking during a conversation.
Oh, tell me more about this.
So if they're really engaged with what you're saying, their eyes might dart back and forth between your eyes and your forehead.
Okay.
Almost like they're trying to really process everything.
Okay.
But if their eyes keep flicking down to your mouth,
Well, what does it mean?
let's just say they might be a little distracted.
Okay, that is really interesting. And also kind of terrifying, because now I'm thinking about every conversation I've ever had while looking at my phone. Talk about missing cues.
Uh-huh. Hey,
we're-
you're not alone. In our tech-filled world, it's easy to get glued to our screens and completely miss those little but crucial nonverbal cues. But the good news is,
There's good news.
there is. You can actually train yourself to become more aware of them.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about body language and these micro expressions. What other secrets of nonverbal communication are we uncovering today? So we've covered body language, we've talked about those super fast micro expressions.
It's amazing how much our faces reveal, isn't it?
It really is, but what about our voices? I mean, can our tone of voice really give away as much as our bodies do?
Oh, absolutely. Our voices are incredibly expressive. Think about it. Someone could say, "That's a great idea," with genuine enthusiasm.
Right.
But they could also say it dripping with sarcasm.
Oh, tell me about it. I've definitely been on the receiving end of a few of those great ideas.
Right. Same words, completely different message. And it goes beyond just sarcasm, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, think about how you can hear nervousness in someone's voice. You know, a little tremor, maybe.
Subtle.
Yeah, or how about when someone's voice seems like, boom, with confidence when they're sure of themselves. And then there's pacing.
Oh, pacing is huge. I have this friend who talks a mile a minute when she's excited, but sometimes I honestly wonder if she's actually nervous, just masking it as enthusiasm, you know?
You got it. That's the thing. Context is key. Now, rapid fire speech could be excitement, but pair that with, say, fidgeting, maybe avoiding eye contact during a big presentation.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, it's more likely anxiety then.
Yeah.
The opposite's interesting too. Someone speaking slowly, they could be carefully thinking about their words.
Or they're carefully crafting a lie. One of the sources I read said liars often slow down their speech to give themselves time to, fabricate.
It's true. It's fascinating how those little things betray us.
They do. And what about those pauses? Those moments of silence?
Oh, don't even get me started on pauses. Those are full of information.
Spill the tea.
A pause could be someone taking a breath before sharing something really important, or it could be them hesitating because they're not quite sure how to answer truthfully.
It's like this whole secret language we're speaking without even realizing it.
Isn't it? It really is.
This is making me think about how much I must have overlooked in past conversations.
Oh, I'm sure we all have.
I'm remembering this one time. I asked my neighbor about a broken flower pot in our building, and he just kept pausing, avoiding eye contact. Seemed really odd at the time, but now I'm thinking maybe he was involved in trying to play it cool.
See, you're catching on, you're starting to see the patterns. That's the key, really.
So it's not just about a one-off observation, it's more about noticing consistent behaviors over time.
That's it. One-off observations are interesting, yeah, but when you start to notice the patterns, that's when you get a much clearer picture of what those nonverbal cues might really mean.
Like how my coworker always clicks her pen when she's stressed. I used to think it was just a quirky habit, but she does it every single time before a big deadline, without fail.
There you go. You found her tell.
Yeah.
That little unconscious signal that leaks out when she's under pressure. And what's even more revealing is when someone suddenly acts completely different than usual.
So, like, if my usually chatty coworker suddenly becomes super withdrawn and quiet.
Yeah, exactly. Now, it might not mean there's something wrong, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. Maybe they're dealing with a personal issue or feeling overwhelmed at work. The real key here is to pair your observations with a little empathy.
So not just noticing the change, but trying to understand the why behind it.
Exactly. Because reading someone, it's not about judging them or slapping a label on their behavior. It's about understanding them.
Right, it's like putting a puzzle together.
Ooh, I like that.
Each piece on its own might not make much sense, but you put it all together, step back, and suddenly
You see the bigger picture.
You get it.
And that's where empathy really comes in handy.
Speaking of empathy, our notes mentioned something about mirror neurons, which sounds a little sci-fi to me, not gonna lie.
Haha, it does sound a bit futuristic, but it's pure biology.
Mm-hmm.
So mirror neurons are these really cool cells in our brains that fire not only when we do something, but when we watch someone else doing it too.
Wait, so if I see you smiling, my mirror neurons are basically acting like I'm smiling too.
Exactly. It's one of the reasons we unconsciously mimic the people around us, especially those we're close to.
That's really interesting.
And it doesn't stop at just movements, it goes for emotions too. Ever notice how you feel lighter, happier around cheerful people?
Oh, yeah.
Or how one grumpy person can practically suck the energy out of a room?
Ugh, been there. So that's mirror neurons at work.
It sure is.
Wow, this is blowing my mind. It's like our brains are practically wired for empathy.
We are, even if we don't always use it.
He makes you think about connection in a whole new way. Okay, so we've talked body language, those super fast micro expressions, tone of voice, behavior patterns, empathy. I think I know what everyone's dying to know, though. How do we spot a liar?
Okay, lay it on me. What are the signs that tells that
Okay.
someone's not being entirely truthful?
All right, well, before we get all lie detector on everyone, I gotta say, even the pros, They get fooled sometimes.
That's fair.
There's no magic formula, but there are definitely some red flags.
Okay, so what should we be looking out for? Inconsistency is a big one. Liars. They often have a hard time keeping their stories straight, so they might contradict themselves or throw in these extra details that just don't quite add up.
So it's not just what they're saying, it's how they're saying it too.
Exactly. They might get really vague when you try to get them to elaborate on something specific.
Oh, like when someone's telling this long, detailed story, but they totally skirt around the one thing you really want to know about.
Bingo. That's a red flag. Or, the flip side, they clam up, get evasive, won't make eye contact.
And stick to those one-word answers.
Yep, exactly. Now, again, context matters a lot here, but those sudden changes in behavior, especially when there's already an inconsistent story, definitely raises some eyebrows.
Totally does.
All right.
What about those nervous cynics we were talking about earlier? Is that a surefire sign someone's being dishonest?
Not always. People get nervous for all sorts of reasons. Could be anxious about a presentation, doesn't mean they're lying.
Good point.
The real key is you gotta know the person's baseline behavior.
So if my normally super chill boss is suddenly sweating bullets, avoiding eye contact during a regular old meeting.
Yeah, then it's like, okay, something's up. It's that change from their norm that really tells you something's going on. And, never underestimate the power of your own intuition.
Oh, that gut feeling.
Yeah, our brains are picking up on tons of subtle stuff, even if we don't consciously realize it. If something feels off, trust your gut.
It's not about becoming a human lie detector. It's more about being observant, empathetic, trusting your instincts.
You got it. Honing those people skills we all have and using that knowledge to build better, more genuine connections with the people around us.
This has been incredible. I'm already noticing things I never would have before. I kind of want to go back and analyze every conversation I've ever had.
Maybe not every conversation, but I do have a challenge for you, for everyone listening.
Oh, I love a good challenge.
Next time you're talking to someone, put the phone away. Really be present in that moment and see what you notice.
Such a good point. We've got to put those phones down.
You might surprise yourself with how much you've been missing.
That's amazing advice. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into nonverbal communication. This is just the start, though. Get out there, practice those observation skills.
Exactly. Have fun with it.
And remember, sometimes the best stories are told not with words, but with a glance, a gesture, a pause. Until next time.